Welcome to Board Game Binge, the place where we bring you bite-sized, bingeable board game content from across the industry. I'm your host, James Staley, and in this episode, we're chatting with Trey Baughn from BGSHIELD. Trey is a logistics strategist by day and a board game vigilante by night. His mission is to save your party games from the spilly willies who always seem to put your games at risk. Trey, welcome to the binge. How you doing, sir?
Thanks for having me. Doing well.
I got to tell you, I am a spilly willy myself, so we'll get into that story in a brief few moments. But gosh, when I read your bio, you said that, and first of all, Happy New Year to everybody out there that's either watching or listening. Man, 2022, I am pumped. This is going to just be an awesome year. I'm always optimistic when the year begins. And I don't think this year is going to be any different. So I'm very excited for 2022 and Happy New Year to you as well.
Thank you. I'm optimistic too. We're going to launch a new product to the industry and this is the year we're going to do it. So very excited.
That's cool. And now, so in your bio, you had mentioned that you are relatively new to the board game industry. So you're like, what is a logistics strategist, by the way? What is that?
So I work for a large logistics company that specializes in delivering appliances and furniture all over the U.S.
Oh, wow.
So that's what we do. I'm responsible for corporate strategy. So all that means is trying to help the company grow, and diversify, improve the value of the company overall. So that's kind of my headspace on any given day.
Now, when you said you're relatively new to the board game industry, is that new to the side of making things, or have you played games your whole life, or are you relatively new even into playing games in the first place?
It kind of all started with COVID. I mean, I had played games prior to COVID for sure. Board games, I would say, basic board games. But when COVID started, the real story behind the situation, James, is that I was an avid fantasy baseball player for about 20 years, highly competitive. And I have a lot of friends who I played with who now work for Major League Baseball teams. It was a hobby for me. But in 2020, when COVID hit, I kind of decided that I was going to stop that cold turkey. I was going to do it for 1 year, just kind of take a break. I was pretty obsessive about it. It was kind of all in for me on the side. And so when COVID hit and I took a break from that, my brother-in-law said, hey, look, I like to play games, not just, Monopoly and Catan, but I've got these hobby games that I wanted to see if you want to play. And it really, it scratched the same itch for me, that sort of analytical, detailed, statistical kind of part of me that has always been there. I don't know why I wouldn't have predicted it that way, but it filled that gap for me. And I haven't gone back to baseball, and I've gone all in on kind of the hobby game industry now. So awesome. It's kind of an interesting shift.
What were some of the games that you were playing over the COVID?
One of the earliest ones that I would say was kind of a transition, kind of a gateway game was Lords of Waterdeep. Okay. That was there. Wingspan was one that was introduced. So some of those early ones that have been very influential. Scythe was another big one that kind of, I would say, took it up another notch. And now I'm a big fan of Reiner Knizia games and things like that. So I like a lot of the, I like a combination of all things, abstract,
card games,
area control.
Case, right?
Sure.
And was it so? And when you say like the analytics that you're used to with the fantasy baseball leagues, and then going into board games, so is that how you approach game play in general? Are you constantly trying to kind of work out the statistics and, for lack of a better word, card counting and things like that when you're playing, or?
I think so. I mean, like we talked about just a couple minutes ago, I mean, my day job is strategy. So I'm thinking all the time about how to improve situations, reduce risk, things like that. And for some reason, that's easily translatable for me to board games. So I play and I'm thinking, what could I do better? How could I change it? What could I do differently from what somebody else at the table is doing? And just always trying. I can't stop thinking that way. That's just kind of how I'm built. So
I got a couple buddies like that, and yeah, it's good because it's challenging when you play them. There's one that can do the math fast, and so they're just very analytical. And when you play them, it's like they almost become the target, right? Because people want to beat that guy, right? The guy that's not playing for fun, but the guy that's basically in it to win it. And then there's the other guys that are going through the stats and so forth, but they wait until their turn, so they have all the data, right? And then they sit there and it's like a 5-minute thought process, and it's like, can you not just go? Like, we're not curing cancer here, man. Like, come on. So, which of those two are you? Are you the quick thinking guy, or are you the guy that when it gets to your turn, you got to take the pause?
I like to think that I'm quicker thinking. I mean, I'm sure there's games that give me some extra analysis paralysis, but try to be quick thinking. It's really more about thinking differently, not so much. There is a method there, but always trying to want to do something different. I'm very competitive and a little bit obsessive in my personality, and somehow that translated so easily and so quickly from what I did in baseball for 2 decades to board games now.
Now, have you approached any baseball games at all? Because I think there are a few even baseball board games out there. Are any of these on your list, or is it just too simplistic versus what you're doing?
They are. So I played sabermetric games for a long time. And then there are some baseball games that like 2045 Baseball Highlights is kind of on my list. I haven't played it yet, but I think that's a deck building game that has been kind of on my radar. So yeah, if I can find the perfect combination of the two, it would be a sweet spot probably.
No, that's cool. And when you're playing and when you're thinking like kind of this strategic approach, are you ever playing games and you're thinking even how you can improve upon the game itself? Like, you ever go through that thought process that, I think I would change that mechanic, or I would do this differently based on kind of how I'm seeing this play out?
I do. I think that's pretty common to think, could this be done better? The problem I have is that, and hopefully people that are listening to this will sympathize with this, but I now have so many games, or kind of have that habit of trying out so many games, that I don't get the opportunity to play the same game enough times to really feel like I can justify making, a personal recommendation to change the rules or change the way things are done. So, you play a new game and you think, man, this is either great or I would change this, but you've only played it 3 or 4 times. You really haven't had the chance to give it its full opportunity to play.
I'm guilty of that myself. My design partner, who's also my brother, and I will be playing a game, and it'll be a brand new game, and right away it's into, I think I would do this differently, or what would make a cool game if we took this mechanic and did this over here, and it's tough to kind of turn it off, right? But it's that's why it's important when you're doing those kind of things to play with the right people, right? Because not everybody, some people just want to turn their minds off when they're playing games, quite frankly, right?
And that's what's made it challenging. I mean, we started this by talking about the COVID era.
Yeah.
And we're in that era now, and it is a little more challenging to get people to the table, to get to places where people can play. I would absolutely love to play with a larger than 2 or 3 people group over and over and over and over again on the same game. That would be fantastic to really kind of get in the nuts and bolts. Just as an example, one of the games that I wanted for Christmas that I did get was Eric Lang's new game, Ankh.
Mm.
And I've only played it a couple times so far since Christmas, but I really like it. I can see that there's a lot of depth there. It really scratches that strategic itch that we were talking about. But
Yeah.
I want to play that game with the same group over and over and over again. And that group is hard to find right now.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, I guess online is where a lot of people are going now and trying their best either through like a board game arena or Sovereignty or one of these other kind of online applications, right? But it helps scratch a bit of an itch, but it's just not the same as that tactile experience of having everybody around the table, right?
Exactly. Playing the players is just as much fun as playing the game.
So I came across you on TikTok of all places, where I first came across. Were you doing like, I don't even know how I found you. Are you advertising, or were you just throwing videos out there and it just happened to hit me because we had similar TikTok interests, or what's going on there?
All organic so far. Just throwing
Wow.
out some videos there. So that's probably how you found me. I'm not a professional TikToker at all, but I did have a video that I guess you would consider to be viral, that literally all it showed was a paper towel sucking up water on, I think, Tidal Blades, the board game, and somehow that's had 2 million views. So
Wow.
take that for what it's worth.
Oh, that's awesome. Congratulations on that. To get that kind of organic reach is amazing. So, and what the product was, it was BG Shield, which is this product you've invented. How did you come up with the idea for that? Well, first of all, explain to the audience what BG Shield is, and then we'll get into kind of the guts of the product itself.
Sure. So BG/SHIELD is a repellent coating that goes on board games to party-proof them from spills that would happen on any given game night. So party-proofing, I don't know if anybody's ever coined that word, but essentially what that means is protecting your games, primarily the game boards and the game boxes, the big cardboard components, protecting those from spills from water, wine, coffee, tea, pretty much anything that you can throw at it that would be sitting on a game table during game night. So the way that started was, again, back when I started playing some of these board games that we were talking about, we had an accident one night. It was on Lords of Waterdeep. We spilled a beer one night that, wasn't a small spill. It was a pretty devastating situation. It was an accident. And it became clear to me there's got to be a way to protect our board games from spills. I mean, we have sleeves for cards, we have metal coins as upgrades for cardboard coins, we have box bands for boxes, but there's really nothing out there for the core components. So it was an idea, and I just started doing some research, and the research wasn't very promising. I mean, the best practice that I saw on some threads on Board Game Geek was, hey, you could cut a piece of plexiglass and you could lay that across all your board games. It wasn't practical.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the best way to do this is not to allow any food or drink on your table. But again, some people don't play that way. In our house, we think playing board games is a family affair. We like the fellowship that's involved of having everybody around the table, and it's hard to get around the table without having some kind of food or drink. So that was the origin of the idea, and it's taken me probably about a year to do the full research, find the solution, and really test the solution that I think is going to be the perfect fit for when we go to market.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite stories was I was at a game night as part of a meetup group. This is now almost 3 years ago because of COVID. I'm in Canada. We're shut down again, right? So we haven't had meetup groups here in quite some time, but that was my kind of go-to weekly game night, was at a meetup group in Newmarket. And I remember sitting down, it was at a pub, right? And one of the players had come and said, hey, we got this new game. It's called Secret Hitler. It's this kind of social deduction game. He literally pulls a shrink wrap off of it. So it's a brand new game. Starts unpacking it. Everything's just finished unpacking. And I sit down with my pint and I just reach over to grab a card or something, and my hand hits the beer, and literally the entire beer dumps all over this guy's game. And, everyone's running, getting the paper towels, quickly trying to dry it up. And, I felt horrible. I ended up buying him another game. I said, you know what, I'm ordering one tonight, like right now, to get you another game. And I took that one. But even though you dry it as fast as you can, you're always going to have warping. There's going to be some moisture wicking. And not to mention the smell of every time you open that game now, all you smell is like the pub where I was at, right?
Exactly.
So, I can see, and that's what kind of hooked me on this video that I saw, your TikTok video, was seeing a spilled drink and you're literally wiping it up, right? And it's pooling and it's just sitting on top of the surface, and you can see that it's not soaking into the cardboard. How did you find this liquid solution? So, and just maybe explain to people how you apply this. So from what I can see in your videos, it's like in a little bottle, almost looks like those 5-hour energy bottles. You're dabbing onto a towel. You're wearing gloves, and you're basically in circular motions. You're applying it to the surface of your game. How did you come up with this liquid? Where did you find it? Like, how does that come together? Especially since you're not a chemist, right? You're a logistics guy.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm not a chemist, but sourcing ideas is kind of part of what I do. And so I tried to find a manufacturer that I could partner with that had some expertise in this area of repelling water and other moisture. And I found kind of the perfect marriage with a manufacturer that has been doing research with this particular chemical for over 10 years. He's never done it on board games, but after a lot of testing over the last year, we found out that it works perfectly. But like you said, James, it's very, very easy to apply. So the ease of application was one of the, I'd say, 4 criteria that I really had. It's important to, I think, say that I am the very first customer of BGSHIELD. So I think I just mentioned I got, Ankh, the board game, for Christmas. The very first thing I did was pull that out of the box, lay it down on a towel, and I went to town making sure that game was fully protected. So the ease of application is important. You literally just take a small bottle. It's easiest to apply with a small piece of felt. Think of like maybe a 2-inch piece of felt. You just kind of dab that over the bottle, and that one little dab, about 2 milliliters, can do roughly what I would say an average size board game. So average size is about 20 inches by 20 inches. Think of maybe the board game Horrified as a good example, but you can pretty much wipe down that entire board, that front side of the board, with just one or 2 dabs over the bottle. So wow. A full bottle will do about 10 games, maybe 12, sometimes more, depending on the size of the games that you're doing. But it's very, very easy to apply at home. The other thing that I know you'll ask me, because everybody does, is, does it work? Yes, it does. It works. I've got plenty of testing, hours and hours and months of testing. And the great news is that it works in a way that it won't discolor your game. So it leaves no residue. It's completely crystal clear. It's not a polyurethane. It's not any kind of enamel that you would think. I actually did try that. Tried polyurethane, and it didn't work the way that I wanted. It left a residue on my game that nobody wants. Nobody wants to change any aspect of the game that they have. So yeah, ease of use, the efficacy of making sure that it works, making sure that it's safe, making sure that it is affordable. All those were kind of the criteria that I used to define the final solution.
So there's a bunch of things in there I want to unpack. So one is actually, you said it for what is the price for a little bottle?
Yeah, so a 30 milliliter bottle, which is essentially a 1 ounce bottle, it will be $36. Okay. So if you get 10 games out of that, you're going to get, roughly $350, $360 per game. We say it'll last you 3 years on the game. The reality is it'll last forever. So we would want customers to reapply it once every 3 years to a board game that they use quite a bit, just to make sure that it's there and they remember that they've applied it. But it'll be about $350 a game, or $1.50 or $1 a year if you think about it in terms of a game per year.
And when you use the word chemical, obviously people start thinking about, safety and things like that. So how safe is this when it's being applied? I know there's gloves that you're in the video. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, absolutely. So gloves are recommended. I've used it without gloves, but we recommend gloves because people have different sensitivities to different types of chemicals. So that's probably the best place to start. It is a chemical, but it's safe to use. Once it cures to the board, there's absolutely no safety issue whatsoever. So it essentially cures into a coating that you can't see, taste, or touch. It leaves no residue and it's safe. The one aspect that's important that we notify or that we list on our bottle is that it is flammable when it's in the bottle.
Mm.
So you don't want to smoke when you're using this. That was important to call out for people who might be applying this, like in a board game cafe or something like that. So it's important to know about that. But as long as you follow the safety instructions and our application instructions, you'll be perfectly fine. But it's primarily best used for, well, what I consider to be the primary component. So think about your game board, your game boxes. I mean, going back to your story in the pub, how many times have you either done it or accidentally laid the box down on a table in the pub and you forgot to look to see if somebody had spilled
Mm.
something before that, and now the back of the box has some damage on it, so now you've protected the back of the box. Same thing goes for the game board. It has characteristics that are very, very similar to odorless mineral spirits that are used to clean paintbrushes.
Okay.
So that gives you some kind of comparison to what it's like.
Yeah, I never even thought about the actual placing the board box down on the table. I mean, now you got me paranoid. I look for that every time I go to a place.
Yeah. Well, going back to your example, I mean, I think you use Secret Hitler as the example,
Yeah.
but think about now, what if that was a 20-year-old board game that isn't made anymore, right? So
Yeah.
you can't get it. You can't replace it because it's now a collectible and nobody's reproducing it. Or it was a $400 Kickstarter all-in package that your friend bought, and again, very, very, very difficult to replace as board games are becoming more complex, more expensive, more collectible. um, you know it's just something to think about. It You could think of it as kind of the ultimate upgrade
Hmm.
on any kind of board game, or you could think about it as kind of board game insurance, just making sure that your best board games are fully protected.
Can you apply it to the edges of like the because I'm thinking when like a board, say it's a quad fold board, right? So you have where it's split there, you have cardboard that's exposed there. So if even if you spill a drink, if the surface is protected, there's gonna be wicking right into the side of that board, right? So can you apply it to the edges of like the cut edges and so forth?
Absolutely, yes. So
Okay, cool.
you would want to apply it to the board flat out, and then the best way I've done it is to fold it up and just take that
Mm,
felt cloth and just go right around the edges. Sometimes you'll see a little bit of wetness from the coating, but it'll dry in just a matter of minutes, and it'll be fully protected on the edges as well.
and I'm even
Same
think.
thing applies to tiles. So if
Okay,
you have like a cardboard tile,
yeah, like Catan, for example. Can you apply to like the Catan tiles?
yes.
Okay, cool. Because yeah,
And
those
the
warp like
best
crazy, right?
they do. And the best time to apply this is when the game is brand new, right out of the box. You haven't even punched the tiles or components. That's by far the best time to apply it because they're all right there without being loose. But I've done games that I've had for a couple of years that are older as well with no problem.
Now I notice on the product description it says that the bottle lasts like a year. It's from manufacturer. Is there so if it lasts for 3 years once it's actually on the board, is it because when it's in its liquid state it's somewhat unstable, or is that
It's
something
just
you
a
guys can
different
expand?
state. Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't call it stable versus unstable. It's just a different state,
Yeah.
liquid now to a true kind of solidified coating. And again, you can't see it. So one of the problems I've run into, and something I'm still working on, is how will customers remember which games they have coated. So Thinking about maybe producing some stickers that you
Hmm.
could put on the back of a board game box so you remember which games you've coded or what date you coded those. That's still something that we need to ultimately work out long term, but you won't know it's there. You can't feel it, you can't smell it, you can't see it. It is completely colorless and invisible.
On your website, and I'm going to show the audience here that are watching the video, you can see that there's liquid that's pooled on the actual board, right? And it's sitting there until it kind of gets wiped up with the cloth. How long could the liquid technically sit on that surface without absorbing into the cardboard?
Sure. So I've done a lot of testing on that. I would say, an hour or less is the ideal situation. You don't want to leave something on there. I mean, you don't want to ever expose your game, regardless of if you use my product or not. You don't want to ever expose your game to prolonged moisture.
Yeah.
Um, it's best repellent against water for long periods of time. So I've left some water overnight without a problem.
Hmm.
But other liquids have different time ranges. So wine is more acidic. 20 minutes is probably, you want to be careful not to leave it on there. But again, in that situation, regardless of whether you apply the product or not, you're going to want to clean up your board game as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I mean and just be clear. I mean, in your video actually literally shows like a bottle of red wine dumped right on the game, and it just get wiped right off, no problem. After sitting on there, so you actually cleaned up the clear liquid first, then went over and cleaned up the red wine that had been sitting on there for like a minute, and there's zero evidence that there was wine on that game, which I thought was pretty crazy. Actually, that was pretty amazing. Can it take marker? So say I know I'm stretching the limits of what you've advertised here, but if I put this coating on a board and then I put like a dry erase marker on it, would that just wipe off as well?
Dry erase marker will wipe off. A Sharpie will not. That's the one thing you happen to pick, the one thing on my list that that has not prevented, but a Sharpie will actually still write on the board. But going back to your wine and water, it was important for me not only to repel water, but think about all the things that could be on a table. So it could be wine, it could be water, it could be coffee, it could be beer, it could be food. So it could be fingerprints. I have videos on my YouTube channel of buttered popcorn, rubbing it all over the board and rubbing it right off. I've tried peanut butter. I've tried chocolate syrup. I've tried rubbing and crushing blueberries into the board. I don't want any of my customers, let's be clear, I don't want any of my customers, running those experiments because they don't need to. I've done it for them. But I have tried just about everything that you can think of with great success. And so pretty happy that it prevents all of those things.
That's awesome. Now you have on your website says tentatively launching in 2022. Direct to markets. If people want to check it out, they can go on your website. They can sign up and then be notified when this goes live. But I didn't see Kickstarter on there. So why not do something like this? Seems almost prime to go on Kickstarter. Why wouldn't you launch this on Kickstarter?
Well, kind of some breaking news. So we did intend to launch via Kickstarter, and we had been gearing up for a Kickstarter launch in March of this year. And just recently, in the last 2 weeks, I've made the decision not to go to Kickstarter. And the main reason is because we're ready to launch sooner. We're ready to go. We have the product, we have the supply chain, we have the bottling. We pretty much have everything that we need. And I'm ready to put it in customers' hands faster than what a typical Kickstarter campaign would ramp. So a typical Kickstarter campaign, you might back today, and you might have that game or product within 4 to 6 months. I'm excited to tell customers beginning February 1st that we'll launch immediately, and they can literally order from my website and we'll have it fulfilled within just a few days. So it was important for me to launch sooner because we have it ready. And we are going to launch a little bit slower. So one difference that's important to note is that a Kickstarter would have most likely been an international opportunity for us. We manufacture in the US, and we're going to limit distribution to the US for a few months just to make sure that we get the right feedback from customers, and then we will make this a bigger international opportunity for folks.
Well, that's awesome. Where do people go if they want to follow this journey along? So is it predominantly the website, so bgshield.com, or is there other areas like even in social media where they can find you?
Yep. So you can imagine this is a very visual product, right?
Yeah.
So we're talking about wine, beer, blueberries, all kinds of weird stuff. So we have a presence on just about any social media platform you can find: TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. So they can find us there. But the best place to get information is from our website, bgshield.com. This is the first product that I know of that is specifically designed to prevent damage from spills on board games. So we don't sell this product to other types of industries. That is specific to board games because I'm a gamer. I love it, and it's just it's a passion that has become a hobby that hopefully will now become a business.
Everybody knows a Spilly Willy.
Oh yes.
Well, Trey, I just want to wish you all the best for this upcoming year and all the success for this product. It looks so cool. I can't wait to see it in action. And I think 2022 is going to be a year you're going to be very happy with.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about it. We're excited, and check us out.
No worries. Take care. Cheers. This has been an episode of the Board Game Binge podcast, hosted by James Staley, produced by James Staley and Mike Bruner, with original music by Nick Smith. If you would like to watch these interviews live, simply join the Facebook group Board Game Binge, and you'll get access to live interviews, giveaways, and interesting board game content from across the industry. I can't wait for you to join us. See you next time.